Their document up. Oh, YouTube window. All right. Just about ready to go. Just give it a second for any others that are coming in a little late. Excuse me. All right. So while we're waiting for others to log in, either through Zoom or through YouTube, just a little heads up on where we are headed. I'm thinking we've got about two-ish more sessions today and next time to talk about how the Talmud views this end of days question, at least within the section of Sanhedrin. Hopefully you found it very representative, not just of the Talmud's ideas on this topic, but also just how the Talmud thinks about things. We'll come back to that in a few examples, I think, today and next time. After that, we are going to look at the summary that was put together by Rambam in his Mishneh Torah. Maimonides is considered to be one of the great synthesizers, a man of encyclopedic knowledge as well as creative brilliance, and thus was able to pull together from across Jewish literature a synthesis of these ideas. Doesn't mean that everybody agrees with every point he makes, but it does mean that his summary is a great place to get at least a broad-ish consensus on the ideas of the end of days. And I think he does an excellent job there and raises many of the questions with a little bit more definitiveness. As we've seen, definitiveness is not really what we should expect. Judaism understands that these topics are not subject to analysis the same way as asking whether or not a chicken is kosher, depending upon its organs. But he does try to give a framework that takes out a little bit of the back and forth. Well, takes out a lot of it, to be honest. After we have looked at his understanding and talked about the pros and cons of his version, we're then going to look at how this has worked in practice. What I mean is we're going to look at some of the messianic aspirations that have happened at different times in our past. We'll look at Bar Kokhba, who is often called one of the first false messiahs. Then we'll look at Shabbatai Tzvi. We'll look at some of the other people who rose to semi-messianic status during the Middle Ages. And we'll talk about modern messianic movements within Judaism as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea of where we are headed. So hold on for just this and one more session, I'm guessing, for our Talmud study, and then we'll get down to some brass tacks, followed up by a lot of history. Okay, let's go ahead and get to work, because it's not going to happen unless we do it. Rabbi Alexandri says, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi raises a contradiction in a verse, meaning addressing God's commitment to redeem the Jewish people. You may remember when last we met, and my apologies for not being able to meet last week because of a funeral, that there was a question of exactly how will redemption come? Will it be on a schedule? Will it be because we merit it? And there is an underlying concern that, maybe God is not going to make this happen. Maybe this will never happen. Maybe we've missed the opportunities. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi wants to talk about this in terms of a verse which seems to be mutually contradictory. In the verse, I, the Lord, in its time, will hasten it. So this is from Isaiah 60:22, very famous part of the Haftarah cycle. But perhaps you can see the issue. It is written in its time, indicating that there is a designated time for the redemption, and it is written, I will hasten it, indicating that there is no set time for redemption. So if we wanted to put this into a sort of modern parlance, it would be the equivalent of me saying something along the lines of, I'll see you tomorrow at 8. I'll try to hurry. well, wait, if you're going to see me at 8, then what does hurrying have to do with it? And if you're hurrying, then how can you predict you'll be there at 8? Hurrying will seem to indicate that you'll get there as quickly as possible, which could be before 8, presumably. And if it's not, well, then if you're hurrying, then you shouldn't be sure of the time in any case. It will simply be as early as possible. So this phrase in Isaiah seems to be fraught with tension. It seems to be saying that there is both a fixed time and there is some unfixedness. There is some inexactitude to the actual time. So how do we reconcile this? Rabbi Alexandri explains, if they merit redemption through repentance and good deeds, I will hasten the coming of the Messiah. If they do not merit redemption, the coming of the Messiah will be in its designated time. All right, so Rabbi Alexandri is introducing this concept through this seeming contradiction in the verse in Isaiah, that perhaps there are parallel tracks. Perhaps redemption is not a one-size-fits-all kind of event. Perhaps the coming of the Mashiach will be in different flavors depending upon the circumstances. And maybe that's the best way to resolve this tension of, do we have to deserve it, or will it come just at the time and there's nothing we can do about it? Rabbi Alexandri's proposing that indeed redemption will come inevitably, but if people engage in tshuva, if they engage in repentance, if they do masim tovim and fulfill the mitzvot, if they live a life that is good and righteous, then that time could be advanced and it would arrive earlier rather than later. So it's it's like you're in a boat and it's got a sail, and the sail is carrying you towards the shore, but there are also oars. If you just sit back, the sail will eventually get you there, but it's going to take a while. If you put your back into it and you grab those oars, you could help add to the momentum, and that will get you to the shore, to your destination earlier. Seems to be that's what Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is implying by this contradiction in Rabbi Alexandri's interpretation. Now, because of that introduction, the Talmud is now going to say, it is time then to collect some of the other teachings regarding the duality of potential arrival of Mashiach. In modern comic book language, you'd say there were alternate timelines awaiting us. There's a timeline where it comes at a set time. There's a timeline where it comes early. And now we're going to see that there are other timelines that could also be considered. So Rabbi Alexandri again says that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi raises a contradiction between two depictions of the coming of Mashiach. This time drawing from Daniel and Zechariah as seeming to give different information. It is written in Daniel, there came with the clouds of heaven one like unto a son of man, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. So, seems to be referring to the Mashiach, and this is a pretty impressive arrival. However, in Zechariah, it is written, behold, your king will come to you. He is just and victorious, lowly and riding upon a donkey, and upon a colt, the foal of a donkey. All right, so Zechariah gives a much more modest arrival. Rabbi Alexandria explains, if the Jewish people merit redemption, the Messiah will come in a miraculous manner with clouds of heaven. That doesn't necessarily mean miraculous in the sense that he's like coming down on a cloud. Don't get the wrong impression here, but it means that his arrival will be accompanied by such an amazing spectacle that it will be all the more impressive above and beyond what the Mashiach himself is already slated to accomplish. So this will be the full symphonic arrival of Mashiach. If they do not merit redemption, the Messiah will come lowly and riding upon a donkey, taking from Zechariah, that if we are not quite up to it, and this is just running out the clock before Mashiach comes, then we should not be surprised if he comes in a more modest way. Doesn't change what he accomplishes, doesn't change the beginning of redemption that it comes with his arrival, but the circumstances will reflect the condition of our people at the time. Now, before we get into a little retort regarding the donkey, take away from this something very important. We have two different teachings, one from Daniel, one from Zechariah. And rather than trying to reconcile them as both talking exactly about the same person, instead, Rebbe Alexandri and others of similar inclination argue that each one can be true, but not both of them. Meaning that Daniel represents one version that might happen, and Zechariah represents one version that might happen. But you can't get both of them at the same time because, in fact, they represent different states of the condition for the people at the time that the Messiah is arriving. So we're either meriting it or not meriting it. We either get Daniel or we get Zechariah. That means that when we are looking through all of the other verses that deal with the Mashiach, we should not be slavishly driven to imagine that at any time the Mashiach does come, all of them will be fulfilled in exactly the way that we imagine each one of those is actually describing. That we need to be a little bit more flexible in our interpretation. If the Messiah arrives in a donkey, we don't say this couldn't be the Messiah because where are the clouds? And if the Messiah arrives with clouds all around, we shouldn't say this can't be the Messiah, where's the donkey? We should instead say, we've got version A or version B, but it's still the same Mashiach. And the setting, the choreography may look different, but the actual effect is the same. And that is incredibly important when we are trying to fully take into ourselves a hope for the Messiah, that when we read through different passages, when we read through different descriptions, we may think that we know, we warningly talked about before, when the Messiah will or won't come. There's no way the Messiah could come now, the conditions aren't right, or, the Messiah must be coming tomorrow. We may think we know, but we should recognize that our knowledge is based upon imagining that we know precisely what all of these texts mean, but not all of these texts will be relevant, will be valid. Now, before you run off and say, wait a minute, but they're prophets, although technically not Daniel, doesn't that mean that everything they said is absolutely true? It is true in the capital T sense of true, but when we read the prophetic words, we do not believe that they are ironclad predictions of an immutable future. We believe them to be conditional futures. There is some debate and discussion about exactly how far that extends, but at least with regards to certain details, we know that we know that different prophets will prophesy things that will not come to pass because the people change. Perhaps the easiest and most familiar example for most people to relate to is from our reading of the book of Jonah, which we do on Yom Kippur afternoon, and thus I hope it is familiar to many people. Jonah goes and prophesies the destruction of the city of Nineveh. And yet, does the city get destroyed? No, very famously, it does not get destroyed. And setting aside Jonah's own psychological problems with that outcome, we know why it wasn't destroyed. It was because the people did the work. They changed. They actually tried to be better people, and thus God did not need to destroy the city. So does that mean that his prophecy was false? Absolutely not. Had nothing been done, had the people continued as they were, the destruction would have happened. But prophecy is not given just so we know the winning lottery numbers for next week. Prophecy is given so we know what we can actually do to make the outcome better, to make the outcome different. It's always given as an educational element, not merely as predictive. This is one of the fundamental differences between the concept of Jewish prophecy and things like the prophecies of the Oracle of Delphi, which come true no matter what you do. You're on rails and you are going where they tell you. Not so in Jewish prophecy. So it is okay that either Daniel or Zechariah will be, quote, wrong, because they each were describing a slightly different set of conditions during the arrival of the Mashiach, but neither of them were disputing that Mashiach himself would come. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and see a lovely little exchange in return, because King Shapur who's one of the kings of Persia, and thus not a Jewish king, obviously, said to Shmuel, one of the great Amoraim, mockingly, "You say that the Mashiach will come on a donkey? I'll send him the riding horse that I have." So basically, he's sort of mocking the idea that our Messiah, our Savior, our King that would be coming to lead us back in redemption would show up on a donkey. That's pretty humiliating. You know what? This king will do us a favor. He'll give us a horse. Ha ha ha, your Messiah is so weak, he's on a donkey. I'll give him a horse if he shows up. So basically, it is a very mocking and insulting phrase. Shmuel, who is witty in his own way, said to him, "Do you have a horse with 1,000 colors?" Making a little bit of a play on words of this concept of the riding horse and the horse of many colors with regards to the Aramaic at the time. So basically, he is implying that just because it's a donkey doesn't make his arrival any less miraculous. In fact, for all we know, that donkey will be the most beautiful donkey anybody's ever seen. And this, of course, is not merely trying to tell us that one should not be derisive and insulting to people who have different ideas. Really, what this is trying to say is a sharp retort to what it felt like to be living under the occupation of other kings and what we were hoping for. So let me just parse out this story for you, if you will, for a more political statement. And by politics, I don't mean, political parties, but I mean talking about what it was like sociologically to be a Jew at this time. So Shmuel is saying, yes, we may look lowly. We may look like a donkey. We may look humble. And yes, you're making fun that our dreamed of king that will bring us redemption and independence will be on a donkey when you've got a horse. But don't judge a donkey by its coat, right? Don't judge a donkey by the word donkey, because donkeys come in all shapes and sizes, and they can come in any miraculous way that God wishes them to come. So you may look at us and think of us, the Jewish people, like a donkey because you are the king of Persia, which is obviously a much more high status position than the Jews within your empire enjoy. But recognize that if God wants the donkey to have 1,000 colors, the donkey will have 1,000 colors. If God wants us to be redeemed, we'll be redeemed. And no, your horse isn't what makes the difference. The military might of those who subjugate us and those who persecute us and all the other tragedies that have gone through our history, that is not what will get us our redemption, meaning we're not waiting for the right horse, nor will their horses prevent our redemption when that redemption is actually taking place. So it is a very colored phrase in order to try and insult him back without drawing too much ire, because it's never good to make the king of Persia unhappy. All right, now we're going to move on to a very poignant story, which is talking about the Messiah himself. I want to get through the story first, and then we're going to come back to it, because there's a lot of elements to it that can be easily misunderstood. And I feel that if I try and explain each one while it's coming, much of that explanation will depend upon what comes next. And it's better to do the whole thing out and then go back and review it with all that context. So otherwise, I'll just end up telling you the story before I've read the story. Okay, so let's work our way through this. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi found Elijah the prophet, who was standing at the entrance of the burial cave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Okay, so Elijah, as we've mentioned in previous classes, is a liminal figure, as somebody who is both gone but was not officially killed, didn't die in a particular way, but instead had the very famous chariot scene. We often see Elijah standing in as a go-between between this world and heaven. And as such, sometimes he will give information that is known beyond the limits of this world, which can give us insight. But that information is usually going to be confusing, and because we are humans, we will often take it the wrong way. So let's see what happens in this exchange. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to him, "Will I be privileged to come to the world to come? Will I have a share in Olam Haba?" Elijah said to him, "If this master," meaning the Holy One, blessed be he, God, "will wish it, Meaning that if God wishes it, yes, you will. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, two I saw, Elijah and me, and the voice of three I heard, meaning as the divine presence was also there. And it was in reference to him that Elijah said, if this master, this divine presence, will wish it so. So it's trying to just make sure we don't think that it was Elijah calling himself the master as giving it. And it's also making sure that we don't think that Elijah was telling him that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the master and that it was up to him, nor should we imagine that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi thought that he meant that he was the master who would determine it. But no, it is up to God. That is what is being said here. But he has a second question to ask Elijah, which is, of course, the main one that we are here for. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to Elijah, when will the Messiah come? All right, for all of our talk about don't try and calculate it, if you've got Elijah standing right there, maybe we should ask. And especially since Elijah, as we saw from some of our earlier texts, is connected to the presaging of the arrival of Mashiach, seems like the perfect person to ask. Elijah said to him, go ask him. Wait, what? Go ask the Messiah? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi asked, and where is he sitting? Where am I going to find the Messiah? Elijah said to him, at the entrance of the city of Rome. All right. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi asked him, meaning asked Elijah still, and what is his identifying sign by means of which I can recognize him? How do I know who's the Messiah? I mean, Rome's a big city. There are going to be lots of people. How do I know which one's Mashiach? Elijah answered, he sits among the poor who suffer from illnesses, and all of them untie their bandages and tie them all at once. But the Messiah unties one bandage and ties one at a time. He says, perhaps I will be needed to serve to bring about the redemption. Therefore, I will never tie more than one bandage so that I will not be delayed. All right, make sure you have the image here. We'll come back to the meaning of all of this, but let's make sure you have at least the structure of the story. So this is probably talking about a condition like leprosy or other illnesses on the skin, which is probably why the people were outside the city of Rome. But they would have been bandaged, covered, head to foot, or all of their wounds would have been covered up. And he says that normally people that have this type of illness just unwrap everything, clean everything, and then rewrap everything. So it's a more efficient way of taking care of their wounds. But the Messiah would unwrap, let's say, his arm, take care of that injury, and then rewrap the arm, and then do the other arm. So rather than being very efficient, he is doing one at a time around himself. And again, we'll come back to the meaning here of why the Messiah is sick and why Rome and all of that. But let's just make sure we get through the story. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi went to the Messiah. Great, he found him. He said to the Messiah, greetings to you, my rabbi and my teacher. The Messiah said to him, greetings to you, Bar Levi, son of the Levite. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to him, when will the master come? The Messiah said to him, today. Now, obviously, for the readers of the story in the first generation it was told, as well as up to our own day, the Messiah has not come. So we've got a problem with the story. Sometime later, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi came to Elijah. So he meets Elijah again. And Elijah said to him, what did the Messiah say to you? He said to Elijah that the Messiah said to him, meaning to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, greetings, which in Hebrew is always the word shalom, to you, Bar Levi. Elijah said to him, he thereby guaranteed that you and your father, son of, meaning the father also being included in that shalom, will enter the world to come, as he greeted you with shalom. Wonderful. So that was his first question. Remember Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi? It has absolutely been answered now. No problem. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi said to Elijah, the Messiah lied to me, right? I mean, that's nice that you tell me I should rely on that, but honestly, he lied to me. As he said to me, I am coming today, and he did not come, right? So what am I supposed to make of this? The Messiah told me he'd be here today, and now much time has passed, and he's still not here, so clearly he was lying. Elijah said to him, "This is what he said to you. He said that he will come today if you will listen to his voice," which is taken from Psalm 95. All right. What do we make of this story? What in the world is trying to be said here? All right. So let's back up and go through the elements of the story a little bit more carefully now that we know where it ends. And hopefully we can make some sense of this. I'm not going to pretend like we're going to get all of it out of it, but let's see if we can get a little more meaning than just it happened. So first of all, we have the idea of the Messiah sitting at the entrance to the city of Rome. Why not Jerusalem? Why not Jerusalem? Why not Tiberias, one of the great cities in the north of Israel during this time period? Why not anywhere else but Rome? Rome is literally the epitome of the enemy, the epitome of evil, the epitome of what has wrecked and ruined our people for hundreds of years at this point. Why would he be sitting at Rome? Well, because Rome was the seat of worldly power. It was the center of the world as far as the people of this generation were concerned. It, through its military might and through its economic power, robbed and pillaged the entire Mediterranean and far beyond its shores for thousands of years. And as such, that is the place where the Messiah would be. That is the place where he would stand, or sit in this case, at the threshold of the greatest barrier to this world's improvement. We may say that Rome brought peace, but it was the peace of the desert. We may joke in Monty Python fashion of what did the Romans ever do for us and say they brought aqueducts and blah, blah, blah. But honestly, Rome was the ultimate impediment to the development of humanity. It raised up to a high level this worship of might in a way that perpetuated the drives of the Yetzer Hara, the appetites of our soul that try to convince us that the only thing that matters is how strong you are, because that will get you what you want, and everything else is an illusion. That is what Rome symbolizes. And as such, that is where the Mashiach will need to strike. That is what needs to be brought down before anything like the Messianic age can begin. All right. Now, he is sitting there, but where is he sitting? He is sitting among the ill, which Rome would have been overrun with, obviously. So why have him sit among the ill? Well, it goes back a little bit to the idea of the humility and humbleness of the donkey that we talked about minutes ago. It also has to do with a metaphor and a parallel to the feelings of the Jewish people, that we are one of those who have been broken and scattered by Rome, that we are sick from the illness of Roman occupation, and that we are wounded and we are in the process of needing to heal. We are not a healthy and good, vibrant people at the moment. We are wretched. We are pathetic in every meaning of that word. So the Messiah is displaying a similar state to us. And what would be the alternative? That he was sitting in a villa outside Rome? No. Time and time again, the rabbis portray the Mashiach, and indeed in some more daring metaphors, even the Shekhinah itself, the manifestation of God's presence, as being in exile, as weeping alongside of us for the brokenness of the world. And this is continuing with that type of metaphor. All right, which then, of course, ties in to the tying and untying of the bandages. That this is somebody that, despite that circumstance, is sitting in a state of perpetual hope, of perpetual readiness, that Mashiach is constantly getting ready to go at any moment, which is meant to be, as we've talked about through some of our previous passages, our own attitude as well. At any moment, it may be the moment of Mashiach. At any moment, it may be a time of redemption. As such, we live with constant hope, and constant hope does mean that some things will be a little bit less efficient, as symbolized here by the untying and retying of the bandages. Now, There is something else that is happening in this that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is missing, that I'm hoping we're going to get now here in our second run. Because the question, of course, that he mainly asks is, when are you going to come? But notice that before we got to that, we know from Elijah's description of how to identify the Messiah that the Messiah is in a constant state of readiness. Now, if the Messiah is in a constant state of readiness, then that means he doesn't know when he'll be called. Right? Understand that. The Messiah is, Elijah already gave Rabbi Yoshua that information, but Rabbi Yoshua missed it. He is still hoping to find a calendar day. He is still looking for a particular fact of this will be the arrival, the ETA for Mashiach. And as Elijah gives him the information so that he'll be able to identify him with this whole metaphor of the wrapping and unwrapping bandages and all of that, Elijah explains that the reason the Messiah does that is because he does not know when it'll happen. Perhaps I will be needed, he puts into the mouth of the Mashiach. Well, if he doesn't know when it's going to be happen, if he doesn't know when it's going to happen to such an extent that he will do this whole complicated tie and untie process, then how can he possibly answer Rabbi Yoshua? Right? And why is Rabbi Yoshua even asking him? Rabbi Yoshua is asking him, of course, because he is still desperate. He wants to know when the Mashiach will come, as we all do, as we all wish we could know, or at least we imagine that that is something that would make us happy to know. As we've talked about, probably wouldn't, but we still would probably ask if we had the chance. And so we're not going to fault Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi too much, but yes, he should already know before he's even arrived that the Mashiach himself does not know when he's coming, or else he wouldn't be doing this bandage process. Okay, so let's make it clear then that when Elijah gives the explanation, he's not twisting the Messiah's words. And the Messiah didn't lie, because how could the Messiah tell him when he will come? If he's wrapping and unwrapping, he clearly doesn't know. But what he does know is that it could be today. Indeed, that's why he's wrapping and unwrapping the way he is, because he doesn't know that it isn't today. As far as the Messiah is concerned, redemption is 100% possible today. And thus he has to do the rigmarole of his bandages. So Elijah explaining what the Messiah meant is a standard Talmudic technique, where somebody will bring a passage, usually from either the Torah or from more commonly one of the earlier rabbis, and they will say, yes, he said this, but what he meant was a much longer sentence that would then prevent you from making the misunderstanding that you had. But it is very common for the Torah and earlier rabbinic literature to speak in very short phrases, not like me, and expect you to understand what is meant. And that is what happened here. The Messiah said today, and he was honest. He indeed could come that day. He indeed could come the next day. He indeed could come the next year, or 100 years, or 1,000 years, because it is not contingent upon the calendar. The Messiah isn't sitting there watching the clock and saying, almost there. The Messiah is watching us. Well, more importantly, God is watching us, meaning that when the world is right, that is when it will come. Now, this, of course, goes back on the other direction, saying that it is about merit that will bring it happen, bring about the Messiah coming, and will make this happen. But as we've seen, there is lots of good back and forth on that. Don't take that as being the final idea of this. Instead, take this as being much more a story about how we relate to the concept of the Messiah as being a potential arrival at any moment, but one that may not come at any moment. We live in that juxtaposition, the Schrodinger's cat of hope, that we know that there is hope for today, and we also know that there is no reason to imagine that it will come today. All right. Also, one more thing in this, we see the Messiah here as being alive. This was more than 1,000 years ago. What does that mean? Well, it means that the figure of the Messiah is often portrayed as being both alive and not yet born. And that is part of the technique for teaching these concepts. That sometimes the rabbis will put the Messiah as a living character within their explanation, not to say that the Messiah is actually just hanging around immortally, but instead because it was important to as a vehicle for conveying the idea that they have. So yes, the Judaism does not believe the Messiah is a permanent figure. The Messiah is a mortal being and has not yet been born, but at any given generation, he might be born because he could come at any point, which means that technically the Messiah is always alive and also not yet born. He is always alive because our hope is always alive that this could be the moment, which means he must have already been born sometime before to be arriving today. But we also have no guarantee that he's here today. Therefore, he's not born yet until we have proof that he's already shown up. All right. Yes, Judaism does come with certain tensions and paradoxes. This is one of them. All right, we will move on because I do want to make sure we can finish this section of the Talmud in the next session. Well, this session and next. So let's keep pushing. Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma students asked him, when will the son of David come? I know. We said before that you're not supposed to ask these questions, and we keep asking. Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma said, I am hesitant to answer you, lest you request from me a sign to corroborate my statement. If I tell you what I believe is the answer, you're going to want a sign. They said to him, we are not asking you for a sign. All right. Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma said to them, you will see when this existing gate of Rome falls and will be rebuilt, and will fall a second time, and will be rebuilt, and will fall a third time. And they will not manage to rebuild it until the son of David comes. All right, so he's got this idea that the gate of Rome is going to fall once and rebuild, twice and rebuilt, and three, but not be rebuilt until the time of David coming. So that's when it's going to be. And after that third fall and before it's rebuilding. The student said to him, our rabbi, give us a sign. Ay, so frustrating. But of course, that's what the story was setting up. Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma said to them, but didn't you say to me that you are not asking for a sign? They said to him, and nevertheless, meaning, and yeah, we did, but give us a sign. Students can be pushy sometimes, and as teachers, we love them. Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma said to them, if it is as I say, the water of the cave of Pamyas will be transformed into blood. The Gemara relates, and it was transformed into blood. Okay, so great. Now we know it's going to be because a miracle happened. No, not so fast. We have other signs and miracles that happen from different rabbis at different times throughout the Talmud, and we know very famously that does not make them correct. Another class sometime we'll talk about what signs and miracles mean in the Talmud, but what here is really talking about is the tension between the teacher and the student, what the students want, what the teacher is willing to give, and how that doesn't always work very well together. All right, but let's continue on his theme. At the time of his death, Rabbi Yossi ben Kizma said to his students, place my coffin deep in the ground, as there is no palm tree that is in Babylonia to which a horse of the Persians will not be tethered when the Persians and Medes go to conquer other lands. And there is no coffin buried in Eretz Israel from which the Midian horses will not eat straw. Meaning, during that wars, all the coffin will be removed from the ground and used as animal troughs. I don't want my coffin to be used for that purpose. All right, a big war is coming. Bury me so deep that no one's going to dig me up, because if they dig me up, they're just using it as an animal trough. So, yes, he's giving them a sign. Yes, he has hope, but yes, he knows that there are going to be wars aplenty, and this is the precaution that he has for himself. All right, continuing on with the idea of the timing of the coming of Mashiach. Rav says, the son of David, again, title for the Messiah, will not come until the evil Roman kingdom will disperse throughout Israel for 9 months. As it is stated, Therefore will he give them up until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return with the children of Israel. Taken from Micah. Well, that seems to be implying once the period equivalent to a term of pregnancy passes, redemption will come. All right, so you need 9 months of full dispersal. That's when it's going to happen. Not exactly a helpful benchmark if you were trying to schedule something on your calendar. Ula says, let the Messiah come, but after my death, so that I will not see him, as I fear the suffering that will precede his coming. So we're going to begin a section here where we are going to see opinions that are basically saying, I believe and hope that God will bring redemption, but not in my lifetime. Now, that may sound strange, because after all, don't we all want to live during the time of redemption? Well, Rav Ula is basically saying, yeah, I want redemption, but I'd rather not have to live through it. Kind of like, let me die, and then wake me up when it's all better. Because that way I can sort of sleep through all of the turbulence that is going to happen. Likewise, Rabbah said, let the Messiah come, but after my death, so that I will not see him. And Rav Yosef says, in contrary, let the Messiah come, and I will be privileged to sit in the shadow of his donkey's excrement, meaning I will undergo all the pain and disgrace associated with his arrival. So some of them were very fearful of what the time would be like, as a way of trying to dampen expectations for people who constantly would jump up and down saying, oh, there's a sign, I bet the Messiah is coming, I bet the Messiah is coming, instead of saying, you better hope not, because if you think the Messiah is coming is going to be gentle, you're in for a big surprise. And then you do have other rabbis like Rav Yosef that say, you know what, it's going to be terrible, but I would be willing to sit through and go through anything in order for this to take place. And that is very much the tension throughout our history. Abaye said to Rabbah, what is the reason that you are so concerned? Meaning about, what's so bad about the Messiah coming? Why are you freaking out that you'd rather be dead? If we say it is due to the pains preceding and accompanying and going along with the coming of the Messiah, but isn't it taught in a Braita that Rabbi Elazar's students asked Rabbi Elazar, what shall a person do to be spared the pains preceding the coming of the Messiah? Right? If you're so worried about the birth pangs, well, don't we have a solution from Rabbi Elazar? And Rabbi Elazar said to them, they shall engage in Torah study and acts of kindness. Meaning that as long as you're a Torah student and as long as you are doing acts of kindness, then you will be spared from all of the trouble and turmoil that comes during that age. Abaye continued, and as far as the master was concerned, isn't there the Torah and aren't there acts of kindness that you performed? And you know what? He's giving him a compliment. Rabbi, you're a good guy. You're obviously an incredible Torah student, and you are a kind and good person. So even if the Messiah came now with all of the trouble and turmoil, you personally would be spared from the worst of it. Rabbah said to him, this is a worry that is always with us. I am concerned lest sin cause me to suffer the pain despite the Torah study and good deeds in which I engage. Why would he believe that? That somehow he might have lost that protection? In accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, as Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi raises a contradiction. Remember, we began with a contradiction. Here's another one for today. It is written that God said to Jacob, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go. From Genesis 28. This was during his first dream with the ladder. And it is written, and Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, from Genesis 32:8, when he is coming back to the land of Israel, well, Canaan at that time, and is going to be facing his brother Esau. Now, what's the contradiction? Well, the commentary points it out. If God assured Jacob that he would keep him, why was he concerned? And you literally had a vision of the heavenly host and a promise of God to take care of you no matter what. Why are you afraid? You should be able to walk through the freeway traffic and know you'd be fine. Why are you afraid of your brother of all things? Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi explains. He was afraid lest sin on his part caused that assurance to be abrogated. It might have been canceled. I mean, sure, back in Genesis 28, God made that promise, but does that mean I can get away with anything? I mean, what happens if I've been a terrible person? What if I've made horrible sins? Then would God still be there to protect me in a miraculous fashion beyond any reasonable expectation? As it is taught in the Braita with regards to this verse, now from Exodus, until your people pass over, Lord, until your people whom you have acquired pass over. Now, how are we going to break this apart? Until your people pass over, Lord, this is in reference to the first entry into the land led by Joshua, meaning the coming across the Jordan River. Until your people whom you have acquired pass over, repetition, this is a reference to the second entry into the land when they returned to Zion from Babylonia. Now, to explain those verses and why this gives him fear of sin, let's just go ahead and roll that down. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi explains, say from now, based on this statement, that the Jewish people were worthy for God to perform a miracle on their behalf in the second entry into the land that was like the miracles that were performed during the Exodus from Egypt and the first entry to the land, which the Jordan River parted for the people to cross over. It was very clearly a miracle. And since Exodus seems to be implying a miracle on the first entry and a miracle on the second entry, we then have to recognize that sin caused the second entry to take place in an unremarkable manner, with the Jewish people being subject to the dominion of the Gentiles. Because that second re-entry, the end of the Babylonian captivity, while it was still miraculous in the largest sense, meaning that we returned to our land, which was unheard of and unprecedented, there wasn't any parting of the Jordan River to make that happen. It was the Persians defeating the Babylonians and allowing us to return. And when we returned, we were still subject to Persian dominion. Yes, they were gentler and much more understanding and supportive than the Babylonians by a long shot. But it wasn't like we were 100% back to free and in control of our own nation. So it would seem that our sins had negated the original promise that was made back in Exodus. And if that is proof that sin can negate a promise of protection, then Jacob was right to believe, as he expressed, that perhaps a sin had caused him to lose the protection God had promised, which means that we also have to wonder whether or not the protection promised because of Torah study and good deeds would also be canceled because we've committed some sin that has nullified that promise. So hopefully you got that three-stage, that we have proof that sins can make a promised miracle not happen because of the second return, the second crossing of the Jordan and return to Israel was not accompanied by all of the miracles that happened the first time. And because of that, we know that Jacob also was worried that he would not have the protection that was promised because he might have done something wrong. And therefore, it is perfectly reasonable for him to worry that despite the assurance that Torah study and good deeds will protect you, that he's done something wrong which will remove that protection. Now, this is not just a story about what these rabbis believe for these historical events. This is a story about the constant state of apprehension that we live in, that while we've been given promises, while we have been given assurances of redemption, of return to Israel, of the ultimate triumph of good, we worry that sin is somehow preventing it or might have canceled it. This is a constant companion. Now, we are going through it right now. Well, if you are with me today, or if you are watching this at the right time of year, going through the section of the Haftarot where we are focused on the messages of hope and of comfort that God gave us after the commemoration of Tisha B'Av, of all of our tragedies. So for a very long time, we have recognized that we might doubt that we are deserving of redemption. We might doubt that it will be fulfilled, even if we believe it was promised, because we've done something to mess up. We've done something to ruin it. And this is a very strong example of that feeling. And in and of itself, the feeling that I need to be careful lest I mess up what should be mine is not a bad attitude when taken in moderation. However, when one believes that they already think that they have lost everything because they have transgressed and there's no hope for them and it's all done, game over, I might as well just give up, that is where there's a problem. So a little apprehension, a little bit of not feeling so cocky that you just walk out in the middle of freeway traffic without looking. That kind of apprehension is healthy. To not think, hey, God promised us redemption, so I don't need to do anything. Yeah, that's not the right attitude. But also the other extreme is a big problem. To believe that you know that sin has ruined the chance for redemption for yourself personally or for the world, that is also a huge mistake. It is something to keep a check on for yourself, that you are not coasting through life, letting God pick up the slack because, hey, that's what was promised. But also one should not become neurotic that one is not worthy, deserving, or ever going to be blessed with any of the goodness that has been promised, because you just think yourself so worthless. No, that is not the right attitude either, right? Like so many things in Judaism, we learn from both extremes, but we don't live there. We hear the echoes of the cautionary tones from both sides, but we don't live there. Instead, we walk a path that says, I need to be careful, but it will be okay. And that has been the wisdom that has carried our people forward. And we will stop our study today on that as well, because we've got a longer paragraph on the next chunk. And I hate breaking it up if I can avoid it, and I can. So I will see you all next week. We'll finish up our Talmudic section on this. And then the following week, we will dig into Rambam's synthesis of all of this. And then once we finish that, we'll start looking at some historical examples of false messiahs and what problems that has caused for us. With that, I will wish everyone well and keep on going.